Well, as hostage negotiations continue despite Witkoff's delay in his visit to the region, here with us to discuss Israel's next steps is Gilad Kabilo, an Israeli political and security advisor. Gilad, thank you for joining us here in the studio today. I want to start by asking you about the hostages. What can we expect to see from stage 2 or perhaps an extension of phase 1 for these negotiations?
So the first thing that is important to establish is that the core strategy of Hamas was to stop the war by taking hostages. And so the idea that Hamas will eventually give all the hostages back is really antithetical to their basic strategy of holding hostages as a security deposit to save themselves. The general idea right now is to divide between either continuing and extending phase 1, meaning the same prices, the same cadence, the same keys that we've been seeing, or to go to a new deal called phase 2. The issue here is going to be the timing and the prices, which is more of the micro-tactical, but on a larger level, is it going to be an end to the war? Something, in my opinion, that Israel cannot live with, but that for Hamas is the core issue.
So the demand of Hamas for phase 2 or for a continuation of this is a total end to the war. Are there other areas where Israel could concede or more pressure could be applied to Hamas?
So there are 3 main things that Hamas hopes to achieve. The first is, like I said, an end to the war. That is the main goal. An end to the war would mean that Hamas has survived a war with Israel in a way that it can show itself as the victor. And we're seeing this in those humiliation parades, in the showing of force around the release of hostages. Suddenly, Hamas militants found their uniforms and are showing up with their masks and their guns as Hamas militants and not as civilians as they've been fighting. The second is a recovery for Gaza, some kind of plan that leaves them on top and lets them control recovery for Gazans. They've been asking for different types of housing solutions, food, energy, etc., and that is something that Israel can probably play with. And the third, as we know, is prisoners. The prisoners are a double-edged sword for Hamas. On one end, they do bring back a lot of prisoners to Gaza and show themselves as the ones responsible for the prisoners. But on the other, they're sending them all into the West Bank and different places in order to light up the street.
Now, in terms of U.S. President Trump, he's been very supportive of Israel since he came into office for this second term. Are there options in terms of pressure from the United States? Are there levers that President Trump could pull to pressure Hamas more into a better deal to get these hostages home, especially the American citizens?
So anything with Trump is going to be high risk, high reward, and the truth is nobody knows what Trump is going to do next. I will say that the levers that Trump has are substantial because he also has levers on one of the core issues for Hamas, which is the international pressure against Israel. This was one of the things that Hamas believed from day one would play to its favor. The 3 things were the hostages, Israeli civil society, and the incredible burden that's been placed on it, especially the reservists. And the third is international pressure stopping Israel. So when Trump speaks the way he does and offers these different deals that he's been putting on the table, he is also removing a large part of the pressure, of the international pressure on Israel to get it to stop fighting. We saw this with the 1-ton bombs that were finally shipped to Israel after being held up by the Biden administration, as well as other issues regarding humanitarian aid that Trump is much more favorable to Israel on.
Now, Trump, obviously, as we all know, has proposed this plan to remove the people of Gaza from Gaza, put them somewhere else, somewhere safe, as he says, and to rebuild Gaza somewhat independently with what he called international people. What do you think of this plan? Is this a negotiating tactic? Is this something that he's serious about? What can we expect?
Okay, so Trump did not put out a plan. It's important to differentiate between a plan and a statement. Trump put out a statement. Usually when there are plans, and for example, in the deal of the century in the last Trump administration, there was a plan that had a document that was detailed, that was sent, that had groups working on it. This was a statement. The statement generally said that the U.S. would take over Gaza and that the Gazans would be removed from Gaza and go to different places. This is almost certainly a negotiating tactic, but it is also a paradigm break. It is one of the first times, I think maybe ever, that a U.S. president is not talking about the dichotomous 2-state solution as the blueprint for the Middle East, but is talking about something that I would either call out of the box or something that really shouldn't be that controversial, like allowing Gazans who want to emigrate from Gaza to leave Gaza, which they are currently not allowed to do.
Now, moving on to a different front, the West Bank. As we heard earlier, there is an active counterterror operation in Jenin. There has been for some time. We've even seen it from the Palestinian Authority combating Hamas and other terror groups there. How dangerous is this threat from the West Bank, and is Israel prepared to deal with it?
So the West Bank is almost certainly going to be a theater of operation that we were going to see growing in the near future. Israel has done a good job of containing the West Bank since the war began, but on the eve of October 7th, there were a lot of voices in the intelligence and security community that said the Palestinian issue, specifically the West Bank, is the most pertinent issue that will explode, and not Iran, which was maybe the other half of the security establishment, their opinion. The West Bank, and especially Jenin and Tulkarm, were the places we're seeing the most action, just 5-6 years ago, were quiet places relative to the West Bank. It was a place where Israel operated freely, and a lot of the Palestinian Authority's forces were able to stop terror there. However, a core strategy of Hamas is to light up the West Bank through the Palestinian prisoner releases and through propaganda, but more importantly, the Iranians are expending monumentous efforts to bring weapons into the West Bank to increase hostilities there. So yes, we will definitely see escalation there.
All right, well, we are unfortunately out of time, but Gilad Kabilo, a security and political advisor, thank you for joining us in studio today.
Thank you, Emily.
Pleasure to have you.